Thank you all for coming to this press conference today. We have three special guests from the European Parliament who will be speaking to you shortly. Before they do that, kindly allow me to give you a brief introduction of them. Our first speaker is MEP Thomas Mann. Mr. Mann has been the chair of the Tibet Intergroup and is the current chair of the Tibet Interest Group in the European Parliament. He has been the president of the two friendship groups for over 18 years, which reflects his long-term support and association with Tibetan issues. Next is MEP Sogor. Mr. Sogor is an active member of the Tibet Interest Group in the European Parliament since 2009. He has supported, sponsored and co-sponsored many Tibet-related activities in the European Parliament. MEP Tremosa was a member of the Tibet Intergroup and is also a member of the Tibet Interest Group of the European Parliament. He has supported many resolutions and conferences on Tibet in the European Parliament. This visit of the European Parliament is being facilitated by Representative Tashi Phuntsok from the Office of Tibet, Brussels. I now pass on the mic to the European Parliamentary delegation.
Much indeed. As usual, it's a pleasure for us to be here among the Tibetans and also the press, because in the European Union we believe on the Tibetan way, the middle way approach of His Holiness, no doubt, and I think we are very close to each other. Yesterday we had the opportunity to meet His Holiness on a very special day, because the 9th of May is the European Day. So the European Day means that in many parts of the European Union we have celebrations. We are together normally with the people from the universities, from the schools. We celebrate our way of how important it is that we have a European Union. And also His Holiness, he made it very clear. On one side, he knows that we have many differentiations there. We have many problems between the member states. For example, the distribution of the refugees, also talking about the money, the European Social Fund, the European Regional Fund, and so on. But this is not the most important. The most important is that we are, as a European Union, it's a freedom area. It's the area of justice. It's the area of human rights. This is the most important. And also we try to verify solidarity, not only in the European Union, also the solidarity with so-called third countries. So that's why we want to give help to the people who don't have the opportunity to have a job, or they are suffering under suppression, they are suffering under being kicked out of the society. So for us, it's very important that we are realizing our Charter of Fundamental Rights. That's why, for us, it's a must that we show and verify the solidarity also to the Tibetan people. Whenever you follow the resolution of the European Parliament with a big majority, we follow the middle way approach of His Holiness. We are, of course, against the so-called re-education program in China. We always protest against the suppressions which you have, and also you have to have the right of education. You have the right to use your language, to use your cultural affairs, to have all the opportunities to survive, and also to survive in a very clean environment. Also, the question of environment is one of the most important for us. That's why we support you. So we want to verify partnership and friendship also with Tibet. That's why the day of yesterday was for us of highest importance, the European Day, celebrating for us in the European Union here with our Tibetan friends. I want to thank you very much indeed. We met the CTA, we met young people. Yesterday we met the NGOs. So we met the museums and so on. So the program, which I know very well, because I have visited Dharamsala, I think 5 or 6 times. Also, I was a member of the TEOM, so the verify the elections, which were very fair, very democratic. Everything was in good hands. And I also had the opportunity to congratulate Lobsang Sangay for the second round to be the Prime Minister of the Tibetans, far away from Tibet. I hope there is a chance also for you to come back whenever it is possible and to have the chance to have a real autonomy. Thank you very much indeed, and Tashi Lili.
Thank you. I'm coming from a former communist country, so for me, all the problems what we discuss in the Tibet intergroup and interest group regarding China policy on minority, it's very familiar. And somehow, in some ways, Romania is still doing that same policy, now not the communists, but the socialists, who are the children and the grandchildren of former communists. So unfortunately, we had this experience too, of course, in a not such a harsh or difficult scale as you, but we have still, and we still have this experience. So the European Union is not a perfect union. We complain sometimes also the lack of human rights and minority rights respect inside of the European Union. So somehow when we are fighting for your rights, we also try to convince our own member states to behave with those 50 million citizens of the European Union who belong to a national traditional minority. As you see, Europe is in a difficult period, a lot of struggles, fights, some wants to leave, some are complaining that there's no justice, not enough human rights, minority rights, less solidarity, and a few members of my community ask me why we are here on Europe Day, why we are not home in our constituency. And I told them that we also need sometimes to be strengthened in our fight and our work. So the best way to celebrate solidarity, compassion, and the peaceful approach and the peaceful fight for freedom, justice, liberty is to be received by His Holiness, and we appreciate very much his struggle for the freedom of Tibetans and justice, and I hope that also EU member states, politicians, or even simple citizens who listen to him, even this year in Germany or in other EU member states, they will get something from that spirituality what we got yesterday, meeting him. And secondly, as I mentioned, I'm coming from a communist country, so one of our most, how should I say, deep experience in 1989 and after 1989 regarding the collapse of a communist system was that we were not enough prepared. And what I'm always telling that, of course, we have short goals in our life and we have short political projects, but we should have long ones. We should be prepared for the time when the Chinese communists will disappear. I mean, the system will collapse. They will not disappear. They will be there, and their kids and grandchildren, and be prepared for that period. And one of our small, humble contribution for that period is that time to time we invite trainees, stagiaires in our office to work and to understand the European Union and the whole system. Even for us, members of the European Parliament, when we are new coming members, the first year it was quite difficult to understand everything. So that's our humble contribution, and one of my former trainees, she's here, so you can interview her too, how is to learn inside of the system how the European Union works. Apalamo, she's behind you, so after us you can also interview her, and we hope that also this year we will receive a trainee from the Tibetan community, and that's the best way to be prepared, of course, for the short terms and projects and the long ones too. And next year we will have elections, so we are preparing also for a big change, And of course, we hope that we will stay for a second term, but even if we not succeed, we do our best that for the next mandate, the Tibet interest or Tibet intergroup should exist, and the work should be continued. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Ramon Tremosa. I come from Barcelona, which is the capital of Catalonia. I am member of the European Parliament since 2009, so I know Mr. Thomas Mann and Mr. Csaba Sogor from many years ago. I have been active also helping Sam Raizi, who is the leader of the democratic Cambodian opposition against the former communist dictatorship that is today in Cambodia. And also I have organized some conferences of the Uyghur people in Europe to denounce the situation that they suffer, and we are also sensible not only with Tibet but with other causes in the world. It is true what Mr. Thomas Mann has said. Europe is a miracle of peace and democracy and human rights. Europe has had a very violent history, but after 1945, last century, Europeans agreed that that could never happen again. And I think that the best success is that from that year to now, we are in an example to how to explain. We can offer these achievements that Europeans have achieved in the last century in terms of economic cooperation, economic integration. We also have a common currency, which has made the crisis not so hard in the south of Europe. Without the euro, the crisis in Greece, Italy, or Spain would be much huge, would be much more difficult for us. So we have to put in value all these things. And just to add something new of what my colleagues have said, I was thinking yesterday night that, yes, we enjoy freedom. Of course, it's not perfect European Union. There are problems in Romania with minorities. There are problems in Catalonia. As you may know, in the last months, we have a government in exile and also ministers in jail. And we tried to do a referendum, and it was repressed violently. It is not perfect, but we enjoy a level of freedom that it is not the same in other continents. And after visiting the museum yesterday afternoon, the Museum of Tibet, we saw and we discovered, we more or less know the history, but it's an experience to have this view of the full picture of the people who died because of the Chinese occupation, thousands of people that have come by foot, walking through the mountains to leave Tibet and to arrive to India. And I realized that I am not a free person if in other parts of the world freedom is forbidden and human rights are not respected. So this is why I am not a free man, a fully free man, if, for instance, Tibetans cannot be free. So this is why it's not just a question to be, okay, I like the Tibetan independence, I'm friend of the Tibetans that wants independence. It is not only about this. It is a question of justice, it is a question of freedom, it is a question of human rights, it is a question of trust and truth. So this is important to say. We will not be free, fully free, if in different continents there are oppressed nations, people that cannot have the freedom to celebrate the religion, for instance, or to pray to the Dalai Lama, like it is happening in Tibet, or people is threatened, is discriminated economically, is marginalized. And if we don't say nothing, it can happen tomorrow in any other part of the world, because each generation in each country has to win again its level of freedom and democracy. It is not for granted in Europe that next generation will enjoy the same rights we are enjoying now. So this is why it's very important. The Day of Europe, we visit the schools, universities, we explain that nothing is for granted forever, that we need to conquest the level of freedoms and democracy for the next generation, and each generation has to fight to keep and to improve its levels of freedom and democracy because it is not for granted forever. Thank you.
Maybe 2 or 3 speakers are now open to the floor with questions.
My name is Thomas Mann. I run a website called Tibettv.com. My question is for Mr. Thomas Mann. Europe, I mean, many individual European countries, they pay a lot of attention, for example, in Syria, for example, before in Egypt and Libya and all this. And within a very short period of time, the Tibet issue has been going on for a long time, and they don't pay any attention. Why is that so? This is one. And second is, Tibetan people's problems are genuine problems. And today there are many Tibetans, they are trying to go to Europe, for example, and there are some in France who are living under bridges, and there are some people, some Tibetans in Brussels, in Belgium, without any documentation. It's a big problem. Switzerland as well, there are 300 to 500 people, Tibetan people, they are suffering without any documentation. So they have no status, they have no identity, whatever. So how can you help? Because this is a genuine case of human crisis, and Tibetans are ignored. What is the problem?
I think the Tibetan case is not ignored. So not only in the European Parliament, because we are speaking the name of many countries when we are there as European parliamentarians. And also we have support groups in other national parliaments. For example, last September 2017, we had a big conference in Brussels. 250 participants from 50 countries were available there, many supporter groups, and also we had the change of views. What did you do better? What can we do more? And how important it is to motivate the national governments to do a little bit more. They said, okay, it's the question for foreign affairs. It should be done on the European stage. That's why we have to motivate the European Council and the European Commission. In the European Commission, there is Madame Mogherini. She's responsible for foreign affairs policy, and she's very close to our ideas. Whenever she prepares the visit, when we have the European Union-China dialogue, every year there is an opportunity for 1 week, and on the agenda is, in the name of us, the Tibetan case. So always this is on the agenda. So it's not a question of being so silent, just the opposite. Whenever we are there, we try to have the communication with others. Also, we have many web pages. We are changing our views, and also we are invited in other countries to make it clear the Tibetan issue should be on the political agenda, no doubt. That's why what we are doing here. And the other one about the status, of course, it's not easy because Tibet is not accepted in all the other member states. Of course, there is much pressure from China. Also in the European Parliament, they are existing. Also there, they try to destroy everything. Or, for example, in my country, in Germany, Angela Merkel, the Chancellor, she invited His Holiness there in her office. Other people, they say, she should invite him in a restaurant. So she refused it. The reaction from the Chinese were, 1 week it was the frozen days, because they said, no chance to talk with the government, no chance for German industry, and so on. So they try to interact. Also, they are well prepared, and also in other countries, they are there. But of course, we are here as not only as individuals. We are here because we are based on human rights. That's why we have to continue our way. It's not easy to have the people, to get them several status, but the question of the justice, we tried to have some solutions there, but it's a very rare field, no doubt. We tried the best, and also we will continue as Tibet Intergroup. I think we really have the power. What are we doing there? Every month we have the meetings with nuns, with monks, with experts, with people from the media, with professors talking about the autonomous stages, which we can do a little bit more, what can we do else, and with human rights fighters. So it is on the agenda, and we try the best to communicate. Perhaps it should be better also to have much more close links, but normally we are prepared for this way. We will never be silent, no doubt.
If you want to add? Yeah. To add two small things. One is that, as you see, even Europe is struggling with the refugee crisis. So it's difficult to say for those who are sleeping and living under a bridge or without any home, 300 or 500, that don't worry, there are millions in the same situation. And as I said, Europe is a fresh democracy, and you can see how much we struggle for a lot of things. And my second intervention or sentence is that, as I mentioned, we have 50 million EU citizens who belongs to national minorities. We have even EU citizens without a citizenship. They have a passport, and this passport is written that aliens. They are mainly some EU citizens from the formal Soviet bloc, the Baltic states, or I can mention Serbians in Croatia. They didn't accept the new reality, and then the state didn't offer them a citizenship. But these 50 million minorities, traditional national minorities, who didn't move there as refugees, just the border jumped over them. If you know European history, the borders has been changed a lot. They don't have a European legislation, and what we can do for you to help Tibet's autonomy, real autonomy, and the freedom is that now we try to convince the European Commission to have a legislative act for the European minorities. And maybe that will be a good example. There are some good examples like Italy, Germany, Finland, where minorities are protected. Some member states, I mentioned Monday, the bad ones, the bad students of the 28 of the European Union school. But let's speak about the good ones. So we always say that the best example is Italy, where North Tyrol, South Tyrol, just economically became more developed than North Tyrol, which remained in Austria. So full autonomy implemented, not just on paper, can be also a huge economic benefit for everybody. So this is what we try now. It's not easy because minority rights belongs to member state competence. But since the European Commission lost the trial, we had a trial. We went to the court against the Commission, and we win this, and we collected for that 1.2 million signatures from European citizens as the European Citizens Initiative, and now the Commission has the ball on his side to do something. So we hope that with this good example we can merge a little bit, we can help a little bit other states of the world to behave and to respect human rights and minority rights. And if China wants to behave as a big power and he wants to compete with the United States, he should learn from the United States history, or from this example, that if you leave your own citizens to decide on their own culture, religion, even economical decisions, that's a benefit for everybody. Thank you.
My question is for Mr. Tremosa. Since what we have seen in your country for the last 1 month, I don't know whether we can say it's an unsuccessful autonomy status, because I don't know, what are, I would like to ask what are the problems that are leading to this the split? And do you have any advice, since we are also seeking autonomy within China, do you have any advice for the Tibetans how best to secure autonomous status within China? And the second question is for Mr. Sogor. You have very clearly mentioned about that we should be prepared for change on Monday. And today you are talking about short goals and long goals. So could you please elaborate on this, keeping in mind the Tibetan status?
Thank you for your question. I will try to answer in a very few minutes. I think that in the world, the best model to deal with the issue of minorities, if there is not the case of full independence, is truly federalism. We have, for instance, the case of Quebec in Canada. We have, for instance, countries like the United States, Germany, Australia, Switzerland, India, yes, in which regions are really strong. They have competences in health, education, social services, infrastructures. But what we see in federalism is that regions not only spend money, they also have powers to collect taxes, for instance, to manage infrastructures and to regulate financial sector. This is the model of Germany. And in Catalonia, when Franco died, the dictator Franco died in 1975, during centuries, Catalan language was forbidden and was persecuted, and Catalonia was an independent state during the Middle Age and so on. And we gained some autonomy, but it was not a real autonomy. We had not the possibility to collect taxes, to manage our airports or trains or ports, and to regulate the financial sector. So it was not a real autonomy. So if you have to negotiate with the Chinese power, the Chinese government, I don't know exactly which is the content of this way of autonomy in the Tibetan case, but without these powers, collecting taxes, managing infrastructures, regulating the financial sector, this will not be a level of autonomy enough to preserve your identity, to be satisfied with the autonomy you have. Maybe at the end you would like to be independent, but if it is not possible in the medium term, in the long term, autonomy can satisfy it. And we see that in Quebec, they hold 2 independence referendums. They got federal powers. There is no demand for new referendums because Canada is one of the best countries in the world in many indicators, and they respect it. And for instance, the French language is official in whole Canada. And when President Trudeau of Canada visited the European Parliament to sign the free trade agreement with the European Union, he used French and English in a 50%. It is an example of best practices. So this was amazing. And Quebecois people is a very low percentage according to all Canadians. So this is an example to imitate. No? And in the case of Catalonia, people has been asking during decades to have an autonomy like, for instance, Bavaria has in Germany or Hesse has in Germany. And on the contrary, the Spanish government was eliminating the low level of autonomy we got. So this is why people started voting for pro-independence parties. And the younger the people is, much more preference for independence. So I think that now it's a question of time. It's a question, all the polls show that. So, and now in the last years, independentist parties has won different elections, local elections, regional elections. So now we have had 2 Catalan parliaments with absolute majority of pro-independence parties with a democratic mandate to do a referendum and to declare independence. And we imagined that the Spanish state in the 21st centuries would react like the British government when Scotland came with such demand of a self-determination referendum. I have to say that the majority for a referendum in Catalonia is higher than in Scotland, but we saw that Spain behaved like always, like in the past, like in the 19th century, 18th centuries, no dialogue. I saw yesterday in the museum that this October you will celebrate, if we can say so, that Dalai Lama sent to Beijing the proposal of autonomy, and no answer has been done by the Chinese government. In the same case, all the demands for truly federalism, full autonomy, has been rejected, so this is why people came up for an independence referendum. Spain didn't accept to negotiate nothing. We proceed unilaterally, and you saw these cases of... but I want to say that our government in exile, Spain has sent orders, Euro warrant orders, to extradite them to Spain, and when German justice, when Belgian justice, when British justice are examining the charges, they see that there are no base to ask for extradition. This will be a lesson, because at the end, Spain, when joined the European Union, accepted that European courts are much more important than the Spanish courts. And now we have ministers in prison that they can be condemned for 30 years, but when this case will arrive to the European courts will oblige the Spanish state to free them. So this is our hope. It will take more years, but if there is not a change in Spain to improve for European values of justice, democracy, and respect of the will of the people, I think that it's an opportunity also for Spain to modernize, to Europeanize the history that they have had. So this is why we imitate, and I finish with this, we have been, our leaders during the Francoism opposed pacific and peaceful resistance against dictatorship, and now we are doing the same. It is not the case of Catalonia like in the Basque Country, in which there was an army that provoked 1,000 Spanish militaries that killed 1,000 policemen of the Spanish police and Guardia Civil. In our case, we have been always respecting Gandhi and Dalai Lama principles of peaceful resistance and not violent resistance. So this is why we have in common, we share with you in common this, and it will take more years, but we will wait like you do, hoping that at the end, European best values will prevail. And for me, personally, to meet yesterday Dalai Lama was very impressive to see how is laughing with us, is sharing his hope with us. So I come back to my country in a very good spirit. And when I put the photos in Twitter yesterday, I had a huge impact in media. And in Twitter, I got more than 100,000 views of my tweet. So just in a few hours. So, and all the media covered that. So I am, because people is sensible to this, and I'm really thankful to the organizers of this trip, and I hope that we will be in touch in the next years. Thank you.
Regarding your question on short and long terms, sometimes our colleagues in the European Union forget also that the EU is not just a union of economical interests, but it's human rights, values like freedom of media, freedom of speech. And the short term is what we always say, that if you follow my speeches in the parliaments or my last two interventions on China or Tibetans, it's always about to raise awareness, to speak against any violation of human rights, minority rights, freedom of speech. And of course, others, short-term projects, our chair, Thomas Mann, mentioned what are we doing in the Tibet interest group each year on the EU-China dialogue. And of course, the short terms are the easier ones. The long term is I can give the experience of my own country and another Eastern European country, which could be more similar to your case, Estonia, Romania. we had in the communist system, of course, the Romanian communists were not so bad like the Chinese, but we had very bad periods too. Members of our community were expelled from the country, they were killed, they were sentenced to long years of jail, and some members, they had the big challenge to be in the structure. They were communists. They did their best, what they could. Some of them, they forgot their own nation, their own language, even changed their names. But let's not talk about them. Those who remain in the structure, of course, after the changes, some of them, they knew that they need to step back, some of them not. And then we asked them to step back because they were hand in hand with the structure. And it took us almost 25 years to get rid of all these people who were working together. And they got a lot of criticism, of course. But, you know, in the balance, you need to look on both sides that without them, we were lost. And the other experience of Estonia, there, of course, when the Soviets came, they simply executed the men. 10% of the population, mainly men between 16 and 65, they were executed, intellectuals mainly. And of course, everybody ran away from the country who could. And they were, after the changes, almost without political leaders. And then they came back from the exile, and they had very good prepared people. And one of them is still our member, our colleague in the European Parliament, member of the European Parliament, Tüne Kelam. He's the oldest EPP member. He came back from the United States. He was in contact with all the issues in Estonia, and they succeeded to rebuild the country. And one of the most successful stories is where there's less corruption. It's also a heritage of the communists, because they put everything on an electronic way. They have the best administration, e-administration, I think now, among us Eastern Europeans, or even I can say in the whole European Union. So they could face all these challenges. So this is what I'm telling on long-term projects. I had not just Tibetan trainees in my office, but also Azeris, because in Azerbaijan they are also treating very badly the minorities and violating freedom of speech. And I also had 2 Chinese trainees. Of course, they were afraid to come to the Tibet intergroup, but they knew it. I informed them with all my books, all my information, and one of them, she's a member of the research department of the Chinese Assembly. I will not mention her name. And she wrote a book about the European Parliament, and she knows about this. And it's just a small drop in a big ocean of 1.3 billion Chinese. But this is what we can do, what even His Holiness said yesterday, that the hope is that there are 300 million Buddhist Chinese who take very serious their belief and their religion. And we can rely on those people. And of course, we struggle with the daily problems and the short-term projects, but we need to think. We are all believers in, somehow we believe in the same God, but different ways. And we know that the life is not just 4 years for politicians, or 40 or 2 times 40 years on this earth, but we need to have longer projects, and that's what we try to do with helping young generation to get involved in politics and take initiatives and take responsibility and learn what means solidarity, sacrifice, and standing for the rights of others, human rights, minority rights, freedom of speech. So that's it.
One last question.
Okay, if there are...
I only want to add one point, thinking in longer terms. I think the most important is that we have to learn from each other about the situation of autonomy. That's why we had many conferences with the professors talking about what is the real autonomy, could be the best one, how is it possible to learn from each other. Another argument is that we have an interparliamentarian groups. I joined it in Ottawa, I joined it also in Roma, and I think we should continue also in this way, talk about the different autonomous principles and the status of what does it mean, what is behind. So this is the most important, that we are able to learn from each other, as my colleagues underlined, it's so important. I think that's what we need. We need to learn from each other, otherwise we cannot resist. We have to have good examples and also talk about bad examples. Why didn't it work? Why the minorities are not integrated very well? Also, this is on the agenda. And it really is better to talk about this situation than to wait for the nationalists on the right side or on the left side. They try to destroy everything. No, we have European values. We have all our principles, and the most important is that we accept also the rights of the minorities. This is the way, it's a document also for the others to have supporters of democratic systems. I hope we can continue also with the impact and all the other opportunities. I think we should also invite our colleagues to join you here in Dharamsala, because it's absolutely unnecessary. We have to be here. We have to be here and to see. And it was a very sad moment when I read the last words of the people who have self-immolation there. Say it's a sad situation. We promised to have democracy and to survive. It wasn't done, and so on. So our answer cannot be, okay, we are waiting for the next unbelievable accidents. Just the opposite, to give them hope, to be here with optimism. Of course, knowing that nothing is perfect, but the most important is that we can prove our solidarity. I think this is the most important thing in longer terms, and also thinking in shorter terms. We will go on. I hope it's enough. We don't know if it's enough, but we try our best, no doubt. Thank you much indeed, and Tashi.
Now the members have spoken. I will take a few minutes to just sum up the basic objectives of our campaign. We have been planning this visit for last year or so, and we are very happy that we are with members of parliament and their spouses and assistants. This is a visit which we have to read in context with the international scenario that is emerging in the current world. We have to read this visit in the context of EU-China relationship. We have to read this in context of Tibet-China relationship. So having a very broad perspective, we must interpret the substance of the visit. Internationally, we know the world is very unpredictable. Whole world is living in uncertainty. There are bigger, broader, more dangerous issues that attract attention of the world leadership. Even in this context, we have MEPs visiting Dharamsala to express their solidarity. EU-China relationship is very high on the agenda, again because of the changing relationship internationally. The superpower and the emerging superpower relationship also affects the European Union. Therefore, European Union has to again realign its role in the international perspective. Therefore, in that context also, EU-China relationship is very, very supreme in the EU's agenda, but even in that case, we have the visit of the MEPs taking place. Then with regard to Tibet-China relationship also, when the world is afraid of China, when powers are afraid of China, when people are afraid of China, even in that context, we have these three gentlemen, their spouses and assistants visiting us. So we have to read this visit in these three contexts. We know that we are not satisfied with the status, the situation. Even us in Bureau de Tibet constantly struggle to put forward, make more progress, make more effort in this current situation. But nevertheless, every month we meet in the European Parliament, discuss numerous issues, like Mr. Mann has listed number of activities which we have taken, a number of programs that we have in the future. For example, in August, we have a photo exhibition in the European Parliament. It is not given that we can freely access European Union. The access to the European Union venue of the conference room itself has to come through the good offices of these MEPs. We cannot by ourselves hire, rent a venue. So even in that small token, we have that inroad into the European Union. Of course, with parliamentarians, we have constant relationship, but even in the European Commission, we have constant discussion, constant communication. So members of press being responsible, and therefore the role being so very important, I wanted to put these few words as summation and also encourage ourselves that, as I've listed, these very serious issues around the world, we are still in the European Union, in the world agenda, and we will be there. Therefore, in that context, we need to be hopeful but perseverant and insistent in our struggle. Thank you.